Oprah has left the building. After 25 years on daytime TV, she finished her talk show this week. I would have to say the reactions were remarkable. People had Oprah parties. One newspaper account said a sports bar showed the final show of Oprah. Lots of tears were shed. Some said it was like losing a dear friend who had mentored them over the years, and yet they had never met. I'm not sure I can quite relate to the Oprah phenomenon, but I can identify, as I'm sure you can, of saying goodbye to folks that you've known for years, but because of some circumstance in their life or your life, you know that your paths will very rarely cross again. It's sad. My sister tells of bringing one of her children to Holy Cross, and on the first day, as part of the initiation, as part of the program, the parents are invited to a closing mass. It's one way to get them out of the dorms. And they used to call it the Crying Mother's Mass, because lots of mothers were crying about having their little babies leave home and go to college. They instinctively knew that this was another rite of passage growing up, and things would never be quite the same. If you can identify with those experiences of separation, you might be able to identify with what the disciples were going through in the gospel. Yet again, we're reading from John in what is called the farewell or last discourse. Jesus is telling his disciples, "I'm leaving," and they are anxious and afraid. But Christ promises them that he will not leave them orphaned. He will send an advocate, or sometimes called a paraclete, to be with them. And a paraclete, spelled with a C, not a K, is a term that literally means one who stands by you. The paraclete doesn't do the talking, or in our case, doing the deciding of what to do, but it really does say, God is with you. God's presence is with you. In the story today, Jesus says, "If you love me, you will keep my commandments, and then I will send an advocate to be with you." Keeping the commandments really is a lifelong process or invitation for all of us. And it's not simply not doing something that is condemned by the commandments, but to act in a more positive vein in building up the virtues in our life, or living out the Beatitudes. If we're trying to keep the commandments, we need to move beyond the obvious. For example, we're told, "You shall not kill." Most of us will never murder anyone in our life. But the commandment involves much more than that. It's about things like anger or holding grudges. When Cardinal Sean was bishop here in Fall River, I often heard him joke about Irish Alzheimer's. You know, it's when you forget everything but the grudge. But I think you know, as I do, it's not confined to the Irish. Folks, maybe ourselves, sometimes tether ourselves to past hurts. It doesn't have any impact whatsoever on the person who hurt us. It really has an impact on us. We just won't let go. We get tied up in that past experience. Or, I struck a chord with some folks, I think it was the first Sunday of Lent, when I quoted Cardinal Hume, the late Archbishop of Westminster. He was an abbot and was made the archbishop, and he was a great writer and speaker. And he said that one of the things that monks, but us as well, ought to give up for Lent is grumbling. Some people said to me, that's me. I'm a grumbler. Well, if it's still you, it's not something that can be confined just to Lent. It's part of this lifelong process of being much more positive about life. The Paraclete, the one who stands by us, is willing to help, willing to inspire, willing to encourage. But in the end, it's you and I who need to keep the commandments. If we do so, Jesus promises, we will have the experience of God in our midst.